I'm Beth Guckenberger, and this is the Reckless Faith Podcast. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to day 22. I'm here with my friend, Rob Hall, colleague at Back to Back Ministries.
Day 22. God will use even this. There's some funny stuff, even if you've read the chapter. I mean, holy cow. Let me start here. I mean, I'm scattered already, but what's it like to get 40 inches of rain? This chapter is about Hurricane Alex, and Monterey got 40 inches of rain in, I think, just like 40 hours. I mean, it was like an inch of, so what in the world? What is that like?
We knew it was coming a couple days beforehand, and Monterey's not even on the ocean, so we shouldn't be getting a hurricane, but the system brought it up, and we're in the middle of a mountain range, and the system got trapped there. So it just kept like rinse and repeat, just kept like letting it out, that rain. We had over 100 guests from 3 different states that were there during that time. And then we have about 100 people that lived on the ministry campus just on their 12 months out of the year. So several, a couple hundred people just within our ministry campus. I didn't even count our neighbors who didn't have the kind of infrastructure in their homes that we did, that we were beginning to feel responsible for as they were coming to the gate. And
water just like you live on the side of a mountain.
Yes,
the campus, and so water's just rushing off of the mountain as it's looking for the lowest point, and your neighborhood is.
So we had the 40 inches coming down from the clouds, and then we had more that was running off the mountain at us, and it was absolutely flooding our houses and ruining the septic system and knocking down our giant 12 feet cement walls. And it was dangerous. And meanwhile, I'm trying to keep, 100 plus people who were there on their weekly mission trip happy. And I can remember Todd and I were kind of dividing and conquering. He was outside running around with the infrastructure issues, and I was inside with the guests. And at one point I ran out to just interrupt him, and he's like,
in the middle of the pouring rain.
Yeah, he's like, oh yeah, it's literally pelting rain at us, and he has a glazed look. He'd been up for almost 20 hours, I think, at this point. And he's like, what? Like waiting for me to tell him, like, the back wall caved in or the toilets popped off or whatever. Right. And I'm like, I just want you to let you know, like, everyone's good in there. I've like lit a bunch of candles and we're leading some worship. And I ended up making some peanut butter sandwiches, and I just want you to know everyone's okay. And he looked at me like, I could care less what they are doing inside of there. Like, I am busy trying to keep everyone safe. Like, go back in with your candles and your guitar. And it was so traumatizing. I mean, there were sinkholes around the campus that we were literally losing 6-foot men in and having to pull them out of. And it was in the midst of that whole storyline that I was thinking about the verse in Jeremiah that I talk about on this day, where Jeremiah says, if you can extract the precious from the worthless, then you can be my spokesman. That's the NASB version. And I can't pretend a hurricane isn't worthless. Like, we lost a lot that day. We lost things that cost time and money, and people had emotional triggers for years afterwards. And it was worthless. A few people in the city lost their life. It was worthless. And to pretend it was worthless doesn't even make any sense. But God has this promise that he repeats in the New Testament in several different ways. And Paul will say it again later about using all things together for good. But like, if we could take out of all the hard some of the good, then we look like his kids. We can be his spokesman. And so we began almost immediately when the rain stopped, trying to cultivate a spirit of gratefulness and extract precious from the worthless.
Yeah, the subtitle here is saying yes to perspective. And it strikes me that maybe of all the challenges we've talked about, all the chapters we've talked about so far, this could be the hardest to perpetuate over time. Like, there's a great action step we'll talk about later, and you can do it on day 22, and it's all great. But finding perspective in the middle of a hurricane, in the middle of a cancer diagnosis, in the middle of joblessness, in the middle of divorce, that takes muscle that you work over a long period of time.
Yeah.
Talk about like, how do you get there?
Yeah. I know this is kind of a funny little conversation, but listening to God is an important part of being in relationship with him, and cultivating that act of hearing from him and trusting what you've heard is from him. And I was praying for a friend that has a medical crisis, and I was just asking the Lord, like, what do you want me to say to her? And how do you want me to encourage her? And she was there, and I was praying for her, and I wanted to hear the Lord say rest, or, which is a word he would say.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to hear him say healing, or like, And I was listening and listening, and I literally heard him say, commission her.
Hmm.
And so I'm like, okay, so sorry. I know you got this thing going on, but I feel like the Lord has something for you in it, and he's commissioning you to go and do it. And as we kind of started to unpack, like, what does that mean? I was like, you know what? Precious from the worthless. I think he's got something for you. And maybe it'll happen in a waiting room of a doctor's office, and maybe it'll happen in a meaningful conversation you have in a recovery, or maybe it'll happen because of someone you meet later who has the same diagnosis as you. I don't know how God is going to use it, but I am confident that he wants to commission you to use even this seemingly worthless diagnosis to take precious to advance his kingdom. That's how he works.
Yeah, and so I love the challenge today, because whether it's a muscle you've never really worked out before, saying yes to perspective, or it's one that's atrophied a bit and you need to kind of get back in the gym, so to
Mhm.
speak, I love this challenge because it does just that. So the challenge today is take a day off from social media or the radio, anything that creates noise. And you talk about listening,
Yeah.
anything that creates noise in your life. Spend the time setting your mind on the things above and remembering how God has grown you in hard circumstances.
Yes, I think listening is a really important part to gaining perspective, because people around you, if your only feedback is other earthly feedbackers, you're going to get like, oh, that's really hard, or I would never want to do that, or I can't believe in 40 inches and that must have been terrible. And like, you're right. Yes, all of that's all true. But when I look at God, I think, oh gosh, you will use anything to make me more like you. You will use anything to bring lost people to you. You will use anything to make me dependent on you. You will use anything.
Mhm.
So will you use this?
You will use this thing,
Yes.
whatever this thing is. So anything is sort of nebulous, right?
Right.
But whatever this thing that I have a choice of what my perspective is going to be in that thing, you can and will use this thing to bring me to be more like you and the people around me to be more like you.
Yeah, and it could be a one-time crisis like we experienced with the hurricane, or it could be an ongoing illness. It could be a terrible boss. It could be a difficult child. It could be a financial crisis. Like, it doesn't matter. No matter what worthless, hard circumstance or relationship that's going on in your life, God can use it, and we can pull precious from it.
Mm, powerful, powerful stuff. Hey, if you have a copy of Reckless Faith, A 40-Day Journey to Saying Yes, we hope the podcast keeps you focused on having meaningful conversation with God and with other people. If you're here and you haven't yet gotten a copy, maybe a friend has turned you on to the podcast, wanted you to listen to this particular episode, you can find a copy of the book on Amazon, or the book and other resources can be found at backtoback.org/40 days. That's BACK, the number 2, back.org/40 days.
I just want to thank every listener for being on this journey towards a more reckless faith with us all together. And until next time.